Hey, this is Vu, and we're going to take a break from Valorant to take a look at Cache. Not that Cache, this one. Cache has always been one of the most popular pug maps, and although it seems like it's probably not returning to the professional competitive pool anytime soon, it's still a map I see people enjoy quite a bit. And if you've never played Cache since, old Cache was removed, then certainly I hope this video can help you out. And really, new Cache plays pretty much the same as old Cache. There's just some quality of life changes for the most part that kind of deal with some weird plays that you used to be able to do. They've made the A site a little bit easier to retake, and they've put in this weird off angle in Z as well. Now, typically what you're going to see is that at all level of pugs, teams still think it's okay to be running a 2-1-2 on the CT side, which really is never the case. One player cannot hold on to mid, and a very simple, kind of trivial take of mid, just with a pretty simple Z smoke, you throw it about like this, can essentially nullify the mid player, because when you're thinking about playing mid as a CT, you can't really play white box. This angle isn't great. If you have an op, they can now come over boost and kind of walk up on you, or they can post up boost, and if you ever try to clear it, they can be in really good position to kill you. But if you play Z, obviously you can get smoked out. If you play sandbags, you can get mollied out. There's really no good place for you to play middle alone that allows you to get any sort of control or even necessarily full information if they go there. So when you're on the T side, you want to be looking at taking mid control. The easiest way, again, throw that smoke there. If you can get a teammate to throw it as well, you throw the smoke here as well, where you just kind of, as you're coming through these two crosswalk marks, you move your crosshair over to the A, and you jump throw near the end of the blue bin. Kind of threw the second one off, but the first one is how it's going to look. And with that, you can just kind of stream over boost. And a pro tip is that you don't need to crouch and boost from here anymore. The easiest way and quickest way to get on a boost now is to have someone stand about halfway between boost and this barrel, and you can just B-hop off their head and it'll get you on a boost. And although it's only saving about half a second, sometimes that's the make or break to catch a player as they're tossing the molly on boost, instead of them having that molly already left their hands and they've gotten in towards sandbags, or they've gotten their gun out by the time you get there. So it certainly can make a tangible difference. With that, I would typically recommend you kind of go 2 over boost, 1 out mid garage, and you have a pretty solid mid control. And with this mid control, you're doing a 1-3-1 on the T side. You get someone towards vents, or you get a couple players towards highway, and you go for a split on the bomb site. It's not very complicated, and one of the reasons this map is such a solid pug map is because most of the angles aren't particularly CT sided. They've made it a little bit better for CTs with this window here, with this little ledge up here as well to deal with some of the plays the Ts can go for, but still, it's not particularly CT sided at the majority of these angles. If, though, you're not playing with a team that will help you take mid control and you want to go for something solo, you can still do this little play here. This smoke off the wall is going to obscure a whole lot of vision, and it's a very common play, and it definitely used to be more common. You throw that smoke, and you kind of just right-click a flash through, and you come out wide. Try and kill this player that's over towards white box if they're peeking, and you can get vent control if they're not. It's a pretty effective way to take middle. It's not as strong anymore because they've added this window that can somewhat deal with that play, and they've also added a little ledge back here that can be used as a headshot angle. So the play isn't quite as strong, but you can certainly still do it, and especially if you have a teammate that's willing to do something like toss a flash over for you that will kind of land high behind you and blind people trying to clear you, you can still get under vents, and once you're under vents, you're not in a bad spot to try and put pressure on their mid players. Again, especially if they're solo, there's almost nothing they can do there. Now, as for attacking the other sides of the map, B is a spot that will occasionally be abandoned. It used to be a spot that people would very often play as a solo spot. They would play a 2-2-1 with 2 on A, 2 mid, and 1 B, or a 1-3-1, which is still viable. but it's a little bit tough because soloing B is very hard. And the reason soloing B is so hard is not because this angle is that tough to deal with, although it's not perfect. It's because the T's can come over to here, to this wood plank here, aim right about here, and run throw a smoke. And that smoke is going to block off the main doorway into B. And once you throw that, you can pretty easily throw a molly into checkers as well that will push anybody off of these angles here. Once the molly goes down, you can do it yourself or you can have a teammate do it. You toss a flash and just take checkers control. And once the T's have checkers control, it's almost impossible to hold on to B solo. You can't play this angle anymore because they can be coming from checkers. You want to be playing an angle like this maybe, but this is pretty uncomfortable because they can be coming out B main. One of the spots that people occasionally will be playing that kind of deals with both is up here, but it's still a bit of an awkward spot as well, and you're looking at two different angles. So when it comes to B, if they're duoing it, they should be playing something like sight and checkers. And if you're on the CT side and you want to duo B, the easiest way to deal with any shenanigans, especially players that like to work B solo, personally I still kind of default into working B solo because it's so rare. Even though it seems dumb, it's still rare at pretty high levels of pugs for people to actually be playing an effective crossfire. But if the B players have one checkers and one sight, it's really just about impossible to actually deal with them. And the B site player can be throwing a flash like, I believe it's right about here, a flash like that drops down, essentially blinds anybody peeking B main, and this guy can peek out with it as well. You can get a lot of things done, and there's not much players going B can do unless they want to throw that utility set and go for that checkers control. And once they get that, they can also go for a bit of an execute because they've made it even easier to take B site from outside. It used to be that you had to know a very specific lineup to throw this utility set, but they've actually added these dots. And this dot here is going to allow you, if you throw it correctly, to smoke CT. And this one is going to be a molly for the bomb site. So now you can pretty easily throw a CT smoke and a sight molly from outside without anybody really having to know what they're doing. And you can flash in as well off of those, and you're looking pretty good to get a B site take with the guy in checkers. You know, there's very little anybody can do. If you toss a couple of flashes, that flash there, and maybe a flash, you know, from back here, you can toss a flash like that. That's going to help blind anybody in these angles here. There's almost nothing they can do to deal with this type of checkers play. Obviously, the response from the CTs is going to be pretty simple, but almost nobody will ever do this in pugs, so you don't even have to worry about it. One of the obvious responses from the CTs is to play a player here, and when that flash comes in, right, there's a smoke down, there's a molly in checkers, they're going to flash in to clear it. When that flash comes in, you just toss a flash back into checkers and push in with this guy, right? This guy's hiding, flash in, clear it out, and now you have the crossfire back as this smoke goes down. The other kind of easier way to deal with that is as soon as the T molly dissipates, as soon as it's starting to dissipate, you re-molly it. And that means you can have a guy in checkers that's safe. The re-molly prevents anybody pushing in on him. And by the time that molly is down, this smoke is down and you have control again. As I mentioned, the A side is actually a little bit easier to retake now. It's also easier to hold solo, which is what kind of makes it easier to retake to some extent. This box here makes it easier to make your way into the bomb site late and molly fork, whereas you used to be kind of in the middle of the open. And if you did molly someone out of fork, they could shoot you with your molly out. But this box is also a really good spot to grab a kill as they're trying to make their way out A. You can also jump from this box up onto the sight boxes pretty easily and take another shot here. So they've kind of added quite a few off angles to the A site, which makes it, again, pretty easy for an opper to be here, take a shot, and you can still fall back. And it's much easier, again, to fall back now because you've got this box here that can provide safety and you can sit behind waiting for your teammates to rotate in. The one thing I would say about A kind of specifically on the CT side is rather than throwing this smoke here, which is kind of the default smoke most people are going to be throwing, you can try running up the forklift, walking right about here and throwing your own smoke off the wall. What this smoke here is going to do is just going to give you an extra 5 or so seconds on your smoke that you wouldn't have had otherwise. It's also going to give you a lot of information as to whether or not they're in there, and if they're not in there, you can even delay the smoke for a little bit longer, and that smoke really allows your mid player to stay mid. Typically what you're going to be looking at as a CT setup is 2A, 1 mid, 2B, but not really, because you're playing more 1A, 2 mid, 2B. It's just a little bit awkward because you need 2 mid early at the very least to set up a player perhaps in vents, or just to hold the early aggression. And then this player wants to be kind of supporting mid and kind of supporting A, right? And if the smoke down in A main is there for longer, it means this guy can be dedicated towards mid for longer, and your team can have a much better setup. As soon as that smoke A main dissipates, you need support on A. And this is why 2-1-2s are so common. People throw their smoke super early, or they don't throw it at all. They think they need support on A from the very beginning of the round, and then you end up getting screwed in middle because it's just one player there. Instead, you want to have that A player capable of holding his own for at least the first little while, and then you're good to go and play a little bit more variable and try and support each other a little bit more effectively. And another thing to think about is if this A player is around and there's pressure put on mid, this is a very effective way to flash middle. You can toss a flash that lands above Z. It's going to blind just about anybody taking mid, and it's going to give space for the mid players to continue to contest from here and from Z as well, and look for picks. You can get picks in middle on cash, fall back, play safe afterwards, and try and play sites a little bit more. You don't need to full control mid, because unlike some maps, mid is not really 100% necessary. That's another reason why 2-1-2s are so common. You really don't want to give it up for free. You can, if they're using a crap ton of utility, back up, hopefully try and grab a kill and go from there. Just to say, I do have a couple of videos on cash, how to hold A. I believe I have how to hold mid and how to hold B as well. These still should hold essentially true from old cache to new cache. It's not completely different, it's just a little bit different, and they're still generally the same idea. Just the things you want to understand are support flashes. These are very important when it comes to cache, and support flashes are the flash that you want to throw in front of A main that should look a little bit like that. You want to get this one down a little bit so it can go over top of A main, land in front, and catch people without blinding your A site player. And the other flash you really want to be able to throw is the flash through heaven that's going to land in front of these boxes and do the same thing for your B player. He's not going to get blinded by it, but everybody pushing in is going to get blinded by it. If you can do those flashes, you're going to have a much better time on cache. And if you have a general idea that don't solo mid, you're probably going to have a better CT side on cache than just about anybody else you play against. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.